Good morning, everybody. I am your host, Anika Carruthers, and you are tuned in this morning or today or this evening, whatever time you're listening to this, to Let's Rap. Let's rise above personal perception. Today, I want to talk to you about life. And the title of this show is Life Happens. Any of you who are familiar with the movie Forrest Gump know that Forrest has a quote in the movie that says, "Life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get." In my new book, Who in the Hell Do You Think You Are? Are you the one responsible for screwing up your own life? I have blended Forrest Gump's quote with a quote of my own. And in chapter 9, I have, "Life is like a box of chocolates, but you get to choose which ones you want to eat." So, I want to talk to you today about life and life happening. Now, you all who, follow me might say, well, that's kind of a contradictory because I usually say life does not just happen. We are 100% participants in the creation of our experiences and our realities and situations. However, there are things in life that we have no control over, right? And so when I say life happens, that's what I'm talking about specifically. There are things that come up like a hurricane, like a tornado, like a death, like the loss of a job, that sometimes, we have no control over it. So, sometimes we can participate in losing our job, but then there are times when companies close down or the economy goes into recession and there are changes that have to happen. But we do get to choose what our reaction or what our response or what our attitude or what our mindset is when these situations happen. And it also gives us a good opportunity to reflect on how we have participated in the outcome of this experience. So, for example, we look at global warming and we look at all of the natural disasters, quote unquote, natural disasters that are happening in the world today. And if we truly are participants in everything that happens in this worldly experience, we need to ask ourselves the question, how am I contributing to global warming? How am I contributing to this change in the atmosphere? How am I contributing to what's happening in the economy right now? Because I really do believe that we participate in everything that happens. But I want to tell you all a personal story today, which is what I was reflecting on when the topic of today's show came to me. Life happens. So in 1999, on the morning of June 8th, 1999, after a battle in a marriage of infidelity, I made a decision that I was going to end the marriage. And so on the morning of June 8th, 1999, I told my ex-husband that the relationship was over. In the evening of June 8th, 1999, my sister was killed in a car accident. So on June 8th, 1999, I had a whole bunch of changes that took place in my life. I now became separated in marriage. I became a grieving sister, and I also became a single mother, all on the same day. So life happened, right? I didn't have any personal control over my sister getting killed in a car accident. I did have something to do with the marriage, ending in different respects. And, I had chosen to have these children. And so now life had dealt me this hand. And so now I became a single mother. So, my platform is change, the catalyst for success. And one of the things that is very difficult for people to embrace is change. But it is one of the things that life guarantees us. Change is going to happen on a very regular basis. Change happens every single day in our bodies. Change happens every single day in the atmosphere. But how we choose to respond to the changes that happen in our life is going to determine ultimately what our experience is in that. And so, even on that day with all the major changes that took place in my life, I had some choices before me. One of the choices with regards to my marriage was that I could be very angry at him because of what was going on and, do the blame game thing and talk about how he was responsible for this and how he was responsible for that. But I really didn't have a lot of time to put into those thoughts because, like I said, I became a single mother on the same day. And my children at the time were 10, 8, and 6 years old. And so I had to kick into gear. I had to kick into making decisions and making choices that were in alignment with the highest good, not only for myself, but also for my children. And then with my sister leaving this earthly incarnation, I had a choice to be very angry at that, to be in a attitude of complete grief, which I was in the beginning. I mean, that was one of the most difficult experiences of my life. It was the first time I had lost somebody through the death experience who was that close to me. She was 29 years old. There were so many things about the accident that just did not make sense. The car was hardly dented. She hit a tree. There was no bark off of the tree. There wasn't a mark that was on her. So there were a lot of things that I had a hard time coming to grips with regards to her passing, because it from the physical perspective, it just didn't make sense. I had seen so many people who had walked away from way worse car accidents. But nonetheless, even though it didn't make sense to me and my physical reasoning, it was something that happened, right? Something that I had no control over. But I did have control over how I decided to respond to it. And in the beginning, of course, that's a major blow. That's a major shock. So even with grief, there is a process that you go through. And yes, I absolutely did have my process. But one of the things that I very clearly remember the next day, the day that, the night actually, that she passed, my father was hospitalized that night because his heart went into irregular rhythms. And so they kept him in the hospital. And the next day I had to go and pick him up from the hospital. They released him the next day. And I remember as I was driving and I looked around, I saw people walking in the street and, they were laughing and smiling and just going about their day. And I noticed that the sun was shining and birds were flying and life was continuing on. And I realized in that moment that, regardless of the pain that I was dealing with, regardless of the shock and the sadness, because I had all these things happen in one day, I realized that life was still going on. And I had a choice. I had a decision to make whether or not I was going to continue on with life or I was going to curl up in a corner and wither away myself. But I had to continue because I had 3 children that I needed to guide, that I needed to provide for, that I needed to love, that I needed to protect, and that I allowed to love me back, and my children were an amazing blessing even during that time, especially my youngest, who, was very young at the time, but she just stepped into being love for me. I remember that every time the tears would come, and they came very regularly, she would just pop up from around the corner and she would hug me and she would say, "Mommy," she said, "I'm here and I'm not going to leave you. I promise." And she would just hug me and kiss me and love upon me. And, I chose even in that really sad time of my life, really difficult time of my life, I chose to, rather than look at what I didn't have and focus on what I didn't have, I made a decision to focus on what I did have. And making that decision helped me to move through that change in a successful way. I moved past the fear because I made a decision to do so. So I moved past the fear, and I decided that I was going to operate from a place of heart, operate from a place of love. I decided that I would check my own attitude and monitor my own attitude on, in the beginning, it was like on a moment to moment basis, because when you experience major changes in your life, such as that, it can suffocate you. It can pull all of the life force out of you. It can be very, very difficult to wake up in the morning and proceed on with your day, and in the morning, every morning was very difficult for me because I woke up every morning crying. It was kind of like one of those experiences where you wish that what was happening was a dream and that you were waking up and that something was going to be different. And so every morning I woke up, I realized that it was my reality. It wasn't a dream. This was really happening. And so I had to deal with those emotions every day. But even being confronted with those emotions at the start of every day, I still had a choice in how I was going to handle it. I'm grateful, very grateful that I had my children in that experience, because having them enabled me the ability and the opportunity to pour into them and to, focus on what I did have rather than what I didn't have. And that's what I chose to do. I chose to live every moment in the now. Like I said, I chose to be grateful for what I did have. And I expected that the next day would be a little bit better than the day before. And so as a result of the choices that I made in that situation, I was able to create eventually a better reality for myself. I chose, rather than to focus on the departure of my sister, I chose to focus on the blessing of having had her in my life for 29 years. I chose to focus on the fact that we had an amazing relationship. We had an amazing friendship. I chose to focus on the fact that I had told her that I loved her that day. I chose to focus on the fact that I had my children who were healthy, who were there supporting me and loving me through this. And you kind of get it. I really made a conscious choice to focus on the things that were beautiful in my life, on the things for which I was able to be grateful and thankful. And so I want to encourage you with the same thing. In my book, Who in the Hell Do You Think You Are? Are you the one responsible for screwing up your own life? I talk a lot about how our thoughts create our realities and how we can move past stinking thinking into more, it's really not about positive thinking so much as making a decision to live a life that is full of power for you. We often put blame outside of ourselves. The reason why our life is so screwed up is everybody else's fault. But we have to take accountability for our participation in what happens in our life. And whilst we don't have control over certain things that happen in life, and we'll never have control over certain things that happen in life, we do have control over how we choose to deal with what happens in our life. So, there's tragedies that happen every single day, but if it takes the same amount of energy to invest in negative thoughts as it does to invest in positive thoughts, and if you know that investing in negative thoughts is going to create a negative reality, but you know that investing in positive thoughts is going to create a positive reality or a more empowered reality, why then would you not choose to spend that time and that energy focusing on things that are beautiful, things for which you have to be grateful, because at the end of the day, we do have the choice of how we perceive things, what our attitude is in our situations. So, my story that I shared with you at the beginning was, one that I could have gone one or two ways. I could have gone the opposite way and decided to be a miserable, unhappy, sad, grieving, lonely feeling person. But I chose life. I chose love and I chose happiness because I realized even in what I was going through that I still had the power to do that. And so, you might find yourself facing a lot of challenges right now. You might be experiencing the loss of a loved one. You might be experiencing the loss of a relationship. You might be experiencing just feeling lost within yourself and feeling like you have no direction, no clarity, no guidance into how to step into tomorrow. If you find yourself in that position, I want to offer to you my help. I'm going to encourage you to go to my website, www.danikacarruthers.com, and on the homepage, click on the Let's Talk button. Fill out the contact information, and I will call you and schedule a 30-minute free consultation with you so we can see where you are and we can see how and if I can help you to move through what you're going through, and more importantly, move into the space that you desire to live in. Okay? I want to thank you so much for connecting with me today on Let's Rap. And if you're interested in learning more about the program, get in contact with me at www.danikacarruthers.com. Go on over to Amazon.com and purchase my new book, Who in the Hell Do You Think You Are? Or to make it easier for you, you can go directly to www.whointhehelldoyouthinkyouare.com and you can place your order there. I hope you'll join me again next week, Wednesday, for Let's Rap, as together we rise above our personal perceptions. Have a blessed day.